Hi, it's John and Mike from brew-dudes.com. So we have this Brewing in a Bag series that we kicked off, and we did one brew, which we will talk about in a future video, but I think right now we want to talk about our whole feelings about this method of brewing. And I'm going to let Mike kick it off with some of his ideas of what are the pros and what are the cons of brewing in a bag.
Well, the first thing that really struck us to the process of doing this is that we talked about this before, but it's kind of like the ability to, it's an easier way to experiment with brewing, because in theory, brew in a bag it's a simpler way of brewing, and it's also, some people report it being sort of a faster way to brew, but the main thing is that it kind of opens the door to experimentation on a scale that's a little bit easier than your normal full mash profile, or if you want to kind of save some effort to try something new, you can try something new by doing brew in a bag. That kind of leads to like what we did. We attempted to do it with a 1 gallon experiment, but then we started talking about, you know, could we foresee really doing this in a full 5 gallon batch? I mean, exactly. Oh God, a 10-gallon batch brew in a bag would be incredible. But there might be people out there doing that. But I mean, in order to generate with brew in a bag for accounting for absorption or whatever, especially if you're not going to aggressively squeeze the bag or louder the bag at all, you've got to account for the volume loss there. So that's got to be a pretty big 7-gallon. You got to plan out for about 7 gallons when you pull the bag out.
Yeah, and talking about what, like typically 12 to 15 pounds of grain in a bag.
Yeah. I mean, just to be even just a moderate gravity.
Yeah, that's for 5 gallons.
So pulling that bag out and suspending it over the brew pod, it sounds like, actually now that I'm thinking about it, the effort that has to go into thinking about how I'm going to remove and suspend a 20-pound bag of wet grain is probably the same amount of effort of building a mash tun to do the process.
Right.
I mean, people are going to argue that point, but I think that let's try to keep the time relative to how you're going to get to the end product.
Sure. I mean, let's talk about the time savings. Do we feel like we saved any time by brewing in a bag?
I don't think we saved a lot of time. I think we felt like the brew session went a little shorter. But maybe shorter by 30 minutes or so. I would say that, I mean, certainly for a 1-gallon batch, heating up like 1.5 gallons of water to drop the bag in was much faster, because it's easier to heat 1.5 gallons up to strike temp than it is to heat up 4 gallons for a bigger batch or more. But in the end, too, the process of boiling is still going to be 60 to 90 minutes, depending on what you like to do. Chilling is, might be ramped up a little bit because of the smoke, but like, I mean, I have a really big chiller, and in a small 1-gallon batch, most of that chiller isn't even chilling the batch. Right. So your equipment still kind of has to scale to the process. I guess if you were an extract brewer doing concentrated boils, and you had a chiller that was 8 inches high and still fit in that, that would work. So, but I don't know if we saved a lot of time. We did talk about practice. Right. It might be a function that was the first time we did it.
If it was time, the 5th time or something like that, we might be cutting some corners. But really, we just didn't have to clean a mash tun. I mean, that was a big thing for me. I still had to. I'm going to use that bag again. So I had to clean the bag.
So you're saying you got to clean it. You got to clean something. And anyway, it might be easier to just dump out a bag, but you still got to hose it out and stuff. Same thing. It really isn't much different than cleaning a mash tun.
So I don't know about time savings.
We did talk about how it was a simpler brew day, because rather than setting up the mash tun, and there's a lot of things that happen in all grain brewing that kind of happen in parallel. Like you're heating sparge water, or you're emptying the mash tun while you're draining, while you're waiting for the boil. There's a lot of stuff that happens in parallel, so it's not a linear set of processes that get you to a 4.5-hour brew day. But the reality of just putting a bag in a kettle, we spent a lot of time just shooting the breeze
Yeah.
while we let the stuff, so because we didn't have anything else to do. In fact, we sort of didn't know what to do with ourselves.
Right.
Because we're used to
How you doing?
checking the temperature of the mash tun and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, my mash tun is direct fired, so I'm constantly like looking at the temperature
Fiddling
to make
it,
sure
yeah.
I'm not going up and down,
Right.
But as far as single infusion in a beverage cooler goes, once you get the process down of so much water, so much temperature, and
Yeah.
you seal it up, and you're pretty much there. It's the same thing as the time as a
Go
brew
take a
in
nap.
bag,
Come
right?
back in an hour.
I was really worried about scorching the bag
Yeah.
in the bottom
Yeah,
of
so we
the
had to play around
kettle.
with that,
So
yeah.
whenever we did need to add heat, one of us would kind
Lift it
of
up.
hold it up a little bit. I don't know if that's how people do it, but
I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
I remember one of the things that annoyed me the most when I used to do extract with grains was a couple times I scorched the bag in the bottom of the pot because I just wasn't paying attention.
Got it.
So
Yeah. So really, we had this thought before, and I think it's time to present this to the home brewing audience at home. That we can see brewing in a bag, because it does lend itself to having small grain amounts. And when I'm saying small, not your 12 to 15 pounds, but 2-3 pounds of grain
yeah,
that could really replace partial mash as the gateway to all grain.
it's all grain brewing.
So, as we were young kids, we started extract, and we got good at that, and then we just kind
Yeah.
of bought all the equipment, and we started becoming all grain brewers,
Yeah.
sort of exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely did like the partial mash. In between, I bought a 2-gallon cooler, and
I have a 2-gallon
we
cooler.
did that too. But
Yeah.
now you don't have to do that.
No, you don't have to do
This
that
is the
because you
step
can
you
just
put-
use your same maybe 3-gallon kettle, 2.5-gallon kettle that you use for extract doing concentrated boils, and now maybe you do a 2-gallon brew in a bag
Yeah.
to get the feel for what it's like to mash. Does it actually taste different than extract? Do you
Yeah.
like the idea of having the monitor temperatures? It certainly, brew in a bag certainly has the potential to just replace the equipment necessary to do that intermediate step to all grain brewing. I mean, I will say too, as far as like partial mashing, when I maybe only did like 3 partial mash beers, and then I realized, why am I doing all this work for just
Yeah.
for
This
30% of my
portion of-
grain
yeah,
bill?
right, right, right.
So you said, screw it, I'm just going to go full, and you buy a big cooler and you do
Yeah,
it.
and you
And
do
in
it.
fact, you just take the guts out of the 2-gallon cooler and put it in a full-size cooler, and you're there. So
Right.
pretty much works out. So
So that's it. Brewing in a bag, the new gateway to all
the
grain brewing.
gateway to all grain brewing.
Gateway. Sounds like a gateway drug. I don't
It
know.
is.
Yeah. Maybe the stairway.
A stairway to
The new stairway to all grain brewing. I'm just trying to put a positive.
positive spin on it.
That's what this is.
I think our generation's okay with gateways.
Okay, we'll take the gateway, opening up the gates.
Okay.
Okay. So that's our thoughts on brewing in a bag as a technique for home brewing. If you have thoughts, leave a comment. And as we always say, brew on.
Brew on.
Brew on.